Hello, and welcome back to In Focus with Ken Clough Photography. I'm Ken Clough, and this podcast is where we slow things down a bit and talk about photography, not just as a profession, but as a creative practice, a way of seeing, a way of connecting with people. Today's episode is one I'm especially excited to share. My guest is Gabby Deck, a talented photographer with a strong design background and a thoughtful, evolving, creative voice. I've had the opportunity to work alongside Gabby at weddings, and what stands out to me isn't just her technical skill, but the way she observes people, emotion, and moments. In this conversation, we'll talk about her journey into photography, what drew her, unexpectedly, into wedding photography, how design and visual culture influence her work, and what she hopes her images give back to the people she photographs. This is a conversation about finding your voice, trusting your instincts, and allowing your creative path to unfold naturally. So, let's get into it. Photography background and early journey. Before we talk about weddings or style, I wanted to start at the beginning, because every photographer's origin story matters. I asked Gabby to tell us about her early relationship with photography and how documenting the world slowly turned into a creative pursuit. Well, Gabby, I really appreciate you joining me here on our In Focus with Ken Clough Photography podcast. I think our listeners will be very interested in your perspective as a young up-and-coming photographer who is obviously very talented. Can you talk a little bit about your kind of a journey into photography and what kind of drew you to photography and why you're interested in it?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate being here. I think there's a few things that drew me to photography initially. I think thinking back to when I was growing up, I had a small digital Canon point and shoot camera, and for some reason, I would just document everything, just everything I saw and everything I did, whether it was through photos or video. And so I was a kid, and so I didn't really understand that that could be art or why I was doing it. I just knew that I enjoyed it. Um, and kind of once I got into high school, I kind of discovered more of the artistic side of photography. My family has always been really into photography. My mom told me that she took a couple of photography classes when she was a young single woman in the 80s, and she developed photos in a darkroom. So we always had collections of those throughout the house. And my dad also really liked taking photos, and my grandfather had a whole collection of different cameras that he passed down through the generations of my family, which I now have. Um, so I think that was really cool. And I think just looking back, photography was a big part of my family, and then it kind of became a big part of who I was. So more so in high school is when I kind of saw the more artistic side of photography. I took a photography class in high school and I used a regular point and shoot camera. And I loved art, but drawing was never really my strong suit, and I didn't really realize all the different forms of art that there was. And so when I took that class, I found myself not only enjoying looking at the world in unique ways with the camera, but I also really liked the editing process too. And then once I got into college, I discovered more about like Lightroom, and then I did like photo shoots for my friends and other people that I knew. So
Yeah, it's kind of very similar to how I started out. I got my first camera when I was 16 and I just photographed everything. Yeah, you photograph everything. And then you kind of learn kind of what you like and what you don't like before you really learn, I think, the technical aspects of what photography is. What drew her into wedding photography? One of the things I really appreciated in this conversation is Gabby's honesty. Like a lot of photographers, wedding photography wasn't something she initially planned to pursue. In fact, it was something she once said she wouldn't do. So I asked her what changed and what ultimately drew her into photographing weddings. Now, I know you've done some wedding photography because we've done some wedding photography together, and you've done some on your own. What kind of draws you into wedding photography?
well, truth be told, when I first started pursuing photography, I never actually saw myself going into wedding photography at all. And funny enough, it was the one type of photography I said I wouldn't go into, but I've actually really enjoyed it. I think my reasoning behind that was like weddings are a lot of pressure and I just didn't want to mess it up. And I had like a very narrow mind and view of what wedding photography was and what it could be. I kind of saw it as like I had to take like the boring stage photos, quote unquote, and I didn't really like see the creativity in it, even though that's not necessarily like the case with weddings. Yeah, there's a lot more creativity that goes into shooting weddings than I initially considered. And so my first wedding shoot was actually with you, was that civil ceremony I did with Marianne and Michael back in August. So
Yeah, that was a fun little shoot that we did up in Glens Falls at the Hyde Museum there. That was awesome. What she loves most about wedding photography. Once you step into wedding photography, you start to realize it's about far more than timelines and family portraits. I wanted to dig a little deeper here and ask Gabby what she loves most about photographing weddings and what keeps pulling her back into this kind of work. What do you think you like best about photographing weddings? Is it the emotion? Is it the details, the storytelling? What kind of things do you find yourself really attracted to?
I think it's the emotion. I really like getting to look at different people's lives and getting to see what makes them happy. And like my own design work, I really like creating work that like speaks to individual souls and their emotions. And then just getting to capture love and how different people celebrate it is really fulfilling to me. And it's really interesting. I kind of like the emotion aspect of it.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's, one of the neat little things about wedding photography is trying to find those special little moments where you're kind of like hidden in the background and people don't even know you're there, but you capture them interacting in some way that they don't even see themselves because they're just so busy enjoying the day, enjoying the wedding. Fast-paced, unpredictable wedding days. Weddings are beautiful, but they're also unpredictable, fast-moving, and emotionally charged. I often describe them as a marathon rather than a sprint, and I wanted to hear how Gabby experiences that pace, especially as someone who values structure and planning. I think you know by now, weddings can be kind of fast-paced and unpredictable, and I think, I've called it's more of a marathon than anything else that you have to keep going and be creative, through the entire day. Could you talk a little bit about that as you learned about wedding photography? Do you find the same thing, that it's just very unpredictable and fast paced?
Yeah, I learned I have to be kind of flexible. I'm a very like rigid and structured person. Like I like having deadlines and I like knowing when everything is. But with wedding photography, I feel like that's a little bit realistic and it's kind of taught me how to be a little bit more flexible in those situations and is teaching me how to go with the flow and take things as they come. I can't necessarily plan everything. So
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of unpredictability in wedding photography, everything from lighting to exposure to, the moments as they go by and trying to capture them all. So there is a lot of, I'm a little bit the same way. I'm really more of a planner and a detail guy. And you kind of lose that, all goes out the window when you walk in to do a wedding because it never goes the way you planned it to. And you just have to kind of roll with it and do whatever you need to do. Artistic influences and style. Style is one of those things photographers feel pressure to define early, but in reality, it takes time. So instead of asking Gabby to label her style, I asked her about influence, the photographers, approaches, and visual languages that resonate with her as she continues to evolve. What do you think influences your wedding photography style? Do you have any special influences? Do you like something that's more cinematic, more fashion, documentary, editorial, or do you think you're just kind of still finding whatever that is going to be?
I have a hard time describing my style because I feel like I like doing a lot of different things. I do have like different types of photography that inspire me and certain photographers that inspire me, but I have a hard time defining like what my style is specifically.
I talk to a lot of photographers, and I don't think anybody starts out oh, I'm going to be this type of photographer. It's more, you kind of find it as you go on your photography journey. It kind of develops and evolves. And I know for myself, it's evolved over the years. I shoot very differently now than when I first started out in photography. I like the way my photos look now. I like the way they look back then, but they're just so different. I've kind of evolved as time has gone on. What she hopes couples feel when looking back. At the heart of wedding photography is memory. I asked Gabby what she hopes couples feel years from now when they return to their wedding images, and what role photography plays in holding on to emotion and meaning. What do you hope couples feel when they look back at your images that you've taken?
I don't know. I feel like weddings are such an important day in people's lives. They're such a milestone for so many people, and a lot of people describe it as like the best day of their life. So I guess when they look back on the photos, I just want them to think about the experience that they had and the love that they had for each other, and just really be able to, I guess, hold on to that and always like remember that feeling. So I just think when people look back on the photos, I just want them to remember the joy of the day.
No, I think, I see the same kind of thing. I like to capture the moments that the bride and the groom or the couple will cherish for a long time. I see some of the couples that I photographed years ago come back and, or they'll message me on Facebook or Instagram. And it's like, oh, this is my favorite photo and it means so much to us. And to me, that means a lot because it continues to have meaning after all these years.
I once heard someone describe it as I follow a couple of photographers on Instagram, and one of them was talking about how one of the grooms didn't think that he would really care about the photos, but then when he saw them and saw all the parts of the day that he didn't get to be a part of, he was like, oh, I get to see it through her eyes, and like that makes it so much better. And I just thought that was really special.
Design background and visual thinking. Gabby also brings a strong design background into her photography, and I wanted to explore how that shapes the way she sees and edits images. We talked about composition, color, structure, and how design thinking quietly influences her photographic work. Can we let's switch gears a little bit? I know you also have a design background. Can you talk a little bit about your design background and creativity and how that might kind of influence your photography?
Yeah. So I just recently graduated from Russell Sage College with a graphic and media design bachelor's degree. And when I was at school, I learned a lot of different design disciplines. But I think one of the biggest things I learned from college, more than any program or principle, was kind of the ability to time manage and adapt to different situations. And I think in graphic design, especially, you have to create a lot of content, often in a short time. So I found that like those organizational skills that I've learned when it comes to design and kind of the structure that my mind already has is really helpful when it comes to photography. But even like the design principles that I've learned about, like composition or just attention to detail and different like things about color theory and color grading, I find really helps when it comes to editing my photos.
That's so true that, everybody brings to their photography a combination of all their talents and all the things that influence them as an artist. And, I think you have this great ability to be an artist on a couple different levels, between design and photography, the creativity flows back and forth. There's influences both ways in what they do. New York City and Los Angeles design influences. Creative influence doesn't exist in a vacuum. Gabby follows a wide range of designers and studios, especially from New York City and Los Angeles, and I asked her how those influences show up not just in her photography, but in how she presents her work to the world. One of the things you mentioned to me when we were chatting earlier was that you follow a lot of design influencers in LA and New York City and that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about what what kind of influences you think really kind of affect you?
Yeah, so there's a number of different design firms that I follow, mainly on Instagram. There's Instagram accounts called like the Brand Inquirer, or there's this famous logo designer. His name's Alan Peters. Um, There's different like design studios that I follow. The one from LA that I was talking to you about last time is called Farm Design, and the one from New York City is called Mother Design. And I also follow different like newsletters, like the AIGA newsletter, the Die Line, this other newsletter called The Medium. It helps me to see the different design projects they've done and how they've integrated them into real spaces. And I think, even especially on Instagram, a lot of the layouts that I see in the posts from different design studios kind of influences how I post some of the photos on my account. And it kind of like inspires me in that way too. Like the way that they use negative space or interactive scrolls or the text interacting with the images in the different posts, just kind of the way that design and photography fuse together in those design firms and how they kind of use it to market themselves. I feel like I'm kind of inspired by.
Current trends in visual culture. From nostalgia-driven design to a move away from overly polished aesthetics, visual trends are constantly shifting. I asked Gabby what trends she's paying attention to right now and why they resonate with her creatively. When you look at all these different, designers that you follow, I mean, is there some elements or something that really grabs you and stands out? Or
I think I'm mainly stopped by like nostalgia. Like there's been a strong push of nostalgia as of late coming back into design, especially in like recent years because of all the new technical or technological advancements that there have been. I've seen like in a lot of designs, people like want to return to simpler times and they more so value like tangible personal design as opposed to like the clean and corporate design that kind of ruled back like in 2015 to 2020, kind of that era. I find a lot of nostalgia is coming back, especially with like retro typography and just different photos. And I see that as a trend coming back. And I think that kind of stands out to me when like a design firm or a corporation lean away from the clean cut expected design and kind of lean into a more like people centered or focused design.
what wedding photography teaches us about people. Wedding photography has a way of revealing things about people that you don't always notice at first glance. We talked about subtle gestures, emotional cues, and how photographing weddings sharpens your ability to see connection and humanity. I want to jump back to wedding photography for a minute and kind of ask you a question about what has wedding photography taught you about people, emotions, connections, things like that.
But I think just seeing how different people respond to each other on that day and just being able to see the look on people's faces or even like the tiny gestures that they do with their family members or with other guests throughout the day just kind of shows me how like I guess complex people are and how complex their emotions are. And there's like a lot of little things that I notice now when taking photos that people like do, or a lot of social cues I pick up on that I probably didn't before.
What kind of social cues did you pick up on?
Say like the maid of honor is like fixing the bride's dress, but they do it in like a subtle way so as to not be caught, or like somebody tugs on one of the other guests to get them to be quiet or something like that. Just like subtle things.
As a photographer, you're kind of a participant observer. You're photographing what you see, and I know I find myself scanning the event or the room a lot, trying to find those moments. And in that scan that you do, when you look at people and what they're doing, you do notice a lot more. I think one of the things that I talked about in one of my other podcasts is that, the ability to kind of pick up on those cues from people, like, so you can anticipate what's going to happen. Oh, they're going to do a kiss or they're going to do a dip. So, when they're dancing, so I better get ready for that. Or, something is going to happen over here, or you catch something out of the corner of your eye and you have, oh, I better hightail it over there so I can get that image because I think it's going to be really good. So I think you're exactly right. And I think the more, I've done wedding photography, the more you kind of see those clues and see those interactions with people, and then you helps you prepare for them from a photography perspective. Advice for photographers starting out. This was one of my favorite parts of the conversation. I asked Gabby what advice she would give to photographers just starting out, especially those navigating self-doubt, mistakes, and the pressure to be perfect. Is there any advice that you would give to someone who's interested in photography, about where to begin? I know, you're kind of at the beginning of your journey, but I think that's also, you've also learned a lot from what we've heard today. So is there any advice you'd give to somebody kind of starting out in photography as to what they should be thinking of, or what they should do, or how they should learn photography?
I guess I have a few points, some more like technical and practical, and some more like emotion based. But I guess one thing is you're going to make mistakes. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And it sounds so simple, but I think sometimes the idea of failure can scare me and prevent me from taking that leap of faith. But like, you're going to get a blurry photo at a wedding. You're going to miss a shot that you thought you nailed. You're going to massively overexpose something, even though you had the settings on auto. Like, things just are going to happen. And it doesn't mean like you're a bad photographer. It just means that things happen sometimes. So I guess don't let that discourage you. I guess something else, like if somebody has a criticism about your work, that also doesn't mean you're a bad artist. Every photographer has a different style, and especially a different style of editing. And everybody has different opinions about everything, and sometimes people won't like what you produce. Of course, when you're working with a client, it's always essential to be open and have honest communication so you can discuss if they're not happy. But some people just are not going to like your work or your style, and you have to be okay with that. That doesn't mean like you're bad at it. It just means it's not their thing. You can't be everything for everyone. And as a people pleaser, I think sometimes that can be kind of hard to remember. So I try to remind myself of that pretty often.
I know one of the things I find myself doing after I finish creating a gallery for a client, I get so nervous about hitting that send button and sharing the photos with them. It's like, are they going to like them? Or are they going to not like them? And after doing this for all these years, I still kind of get knots in my stomach when okay, send, hope they like them, kind of thing. And I think that's perfectly normal. And I think that's, a big part of the artistic process, because people trust you to deliver something to them. And, even though you go through and try and communicate with them to understand what they want, sometimes what they want isn't really what they want.
And I think it's okay to be nervous too. I think you said this once, but like being nervous shows that you care and that you actually like put like the time and the effort into your work, and you care how it comes across. So
That was Dino Petrocelli,
oh.
who's been a wedding photographer for probably 40 years. And when I interviewed him, he said that, even weddings that he shot last year, he was so nervous about. Every time he shoots a wedding, he said he gets nervous. And he said exactly what you mentioned. Being nervous means that you care, and you want to get it right. What she hopes her creative journey inspires. To close out the conversation, I asked Gabby a bigger picture question. What does she hope her creative journey inspires in others? And what does it mean to create work that feels honest and true to who you are? What do you hope your creative journey inspires in other people?
I think I just want people to see my work and be like, wow, she's not afraid to be herself. And she's not afraid to go after her own style and kind of do her own thing and make her mark on the world. I think I just want people to be like, hey, like she did that. I want to do that too. I think I just want to inspire people to go after their own creativity, and even just inspire them to see like the messages that I'm putting forth in my own personal work.
Do you have a favorite moment that you photographed?
Well, I actually shot my first wedding almost 3 weeks ago at this point, and it was my first solo wedding. So I was really nervous about it, and I was very hesitant because usually, like, I have you there and I'm the assistant, and it's not like all on me. And I don't have to be like super assertive when it comes to, I guess, arranging the group photos or like getting the shots or coordinating the times and locations and stuff. But I think from that wedding I shot a few weeks ago, I've known the bride since I was about 10 years old, and the groom I've known for about 2 years. And so I think there was a couple moments where I was just shooting portraits of them in somebody's house, and it was a beautiful house and a beautiful space, but I think like wedding days can be so chaotic that it was nice to just see them like do their portraits together and just kind of relax. And I get to be like, wow, they're like really in love. Like this is why I'm here, like just to capture this.
Awesome. Well, this has been really great conversation. This has been a really great conversation, Gabby. I'm so glad you had some time to sit down and chat with us. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I've enjoyed working with you over the few weddings that we've done. And I think you do great work, and I think you're going to do even more great work in the future.
Thank you. And thanks for having me on the podcast and inviting me to kind of talk about my influences and everything.
As we wrap up, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed this conversation. Talking with Gabby was a reminder that creativity isn't about having everything figured out. It's about paying attention, staying curious, and giving yourself permission to grow. Photography teaches us patience. It teaches us how to observe people more closely. And if we let it, it teaches us something about ourselves too. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who's on their own creative journey, whether they're a photographer, a designer, or someone simply trying to find their voice. I'm Ken Clough, and this has been In Focus with Ken Clough Photography. Thanks for listening.